All right, I think we're ready to go. Ron, if you want to call us to order.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the May 12th, 2021 meeting of the Isle of Palms Planning Commission, and acknowledge that the public and press were duly notified in accordance with state law. So the first item of the agenda is a review of the minutes from our last meeting. Do we have any comments or any motions?
I move to approve as submitted.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, we'll call for approval. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That's pretty unanimous. Okay. First order of business, discussing the housing data with the assessor. Douglas?
So yes, as you all will recall, in our last month's discussion of it was really, I think, the housing element that kind of brought it about as much as anything. But we talked about the data that Philip Pounds had pulled together and kind of what it showed, and then talked about the desire to have maybe kind of more granular data in terms of the housing stock and age and things of that nature. So I made the request of the assessor, and I was quite shocked with how quickly they turned it around. I guess what used to be, like squirrels grinding it out in a cage, now must just be kind of a push of the button for them. So we got that data from them. I don't know. I got the sense that various members were maybe working with it. And I just wanted to see where we wanted to go from here. We did kind of, we did talk about the housing element, but I think we thought that we might bolster up some of that information with what we get out of the assessor's data. So I guess I'd put that to the group. Where would you all like to see us go from here now that you've seen what they have kind of readily accessible?
Hey, Douglas,
Yes.
is it possible for us to perhaps refine the request if they got it that fast and if they're basically pulling all of the information out of their database? Can we refine that ask to get a little bit more from them? I'm not sure what the request was, but it looked like we got parts of the information, part of the data sets instead of all of the data sets.
I can request whatever you think they have that they didn't give us.
Is it possible for us to perhaps refine the request if they got it that fast and if they're basically pulling all of the information out of their database? Can we refine that ask to get a little bit more from them? I'm not sure what the request was, but it looked like we got parts of the information, part of the data sets.
All right. Sorry about that. That was the delay on YouTube coming back through. Scott was not repeating himself.
Yeah, and Scott, you and I chatted a little bit sometime during the last week. Yeah, I was, first of all, quite surprised how quickly we got it. So I apologize. I haven't delved into it much because I wasn't expecting to get it so quick. I was going to look at it later this week. But I believe, I agree, that was very factual subset data of the house size and other things. But there are other fields in that database, like the tax status, the residency status, the other things that would be helpful to do it further. So, Douglas, if you'd like, maybe we could put a little better list together to make a more detailed request. Because like I said, it seemed to have come fairly easily.
Well, so do you guys want to tell me, or do you want to send me whatever fields you want?
Why don't we do that instead of burning time on the clock here? We can work on a request and see if it's feasible and present it to the group here and then get it to you.
Like I said, I printed out one of the more detailed data sheets that show, I think, what all the possible fields might be to select from. Let me put together a summary, and I know Sandy and others had some requests about maybe, some tax status and some residency status. I think that's all in there. So if you don't mind, I'll put together a quick email saying here maybe the other fields we want and shoot it to the group or you, and you can copy the group, and then we can make a more refined request.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I think the other thing that came out in the existing data dump was that some of the fields appeared to be duplicative. And the other part was it didn't look as though, and I may be misreading it, but it didn't look as though it was inclusive of all of the property on the Isle of Palms. There might have been certain classifications of properties that may not have been included.
Huh.
Like the hotels, like commercial, all of that.
That could be.
Yeah, I thought it was all just the residential from the tax information for personal property tax, but didn't include the commercial stuff.
That could be.
Yeah, I think that could very well be because we're working on the housing stock was the section. So I'm actually trying to find my request, but I believe it was probably requesting data on the housing. Which would,
My office building at 1304 Palm, for instance, isn't in the profile we got, the data.
yeah, even the title of the data is IOP housing data.
Well, and I think I was quite surprised at how thorough it was and how quick it came. So, but I do think the other two pieces, I mean, there is a data field in the database for legal residence, tax status, which would tell us whether it's a full-time residence or a second residence. You'll be able to tell that from the tax status. So I think a couple of other refinements would make it a more meaningful sort.
Yeah, 4 versus 6%. I know that we've gotten that from them.
Yeah, that's a data field. I think we just need to ask for it. And whether or not it's somebody's legal residence is another data field that's in there. So those three pieces of information would help us sort second homes versus residents versus rentals to some degree.
Isn't that one and the same? 4 versus 6 and primary residence? Is that two different data fields, or that's one?
That should be the case. Yeah, I would think.
I would think it's hard to tell the difference between second homes and rentals, but we could take the total number and figure out how many rental license and assume everything else is second homes.
Correct. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so that was, that's the general process that Philip, the data you got, I guess, last month, that was how that was arrived at.
Well, does it make sense to reach to Philip and his group first? They may have already done some of this, because I don't think we really reached to them.
I think I talked to Philip a little bit, and I think their take was more revenue source. I think it was a whole different objective of what they were trying to present, from what I understood. I think Debbie Suggs had pulled that data I think she got it maybe Douglas from the same source down at the county. But I think they were looking at it more from the revenue generation component. And I think we're looking at it from number of units and things of that nature, the mix of the units themselves.
But the that Douglas presented to us had that in it.
At one level, yes, Sandy.
The numbers.
Of units.
Correct.
But it didn't include, for example, the hospitality, such as Wild Dunes hotels and things of that nature. Didn't get to the whole hospitality versus second home versus residence. There are definitely pieces apparently may not be included.
Well, we'll have to talk about how to present that, because what we were reviewing was specifically the housing. I mean, we're in the housing element. So I wouldn't want us to put hotels into the housing element of the comprehensive plan, because it's a different animal.
Correct. Agreed.
I know, do we actually have a estimate of how many hotel rooms are on the island?
I'm sure, there's not many of them, so we could get it pretty quickly. I know we have it in the Wild Dunes. I mean, we have it readily available for Wild Dunes, and then that, and how you, there are two buildings on the front beach that were built as traditional hotels and now are individually owned, basically condominium rooms, but they're one room condominiums. Is that a hotel or is it not? I don't.
Condo tel.
A condotel. So we have these kind of hybrid things. So, but yeah, those numbers we can certainly get.
Well, it gets back to, I think in the data we had, the condos are included in that data. So it's like hotel rooms aren't included in that data that we got. And I guess that would be just another, number of bedrooms that are available to,
Right.
How's a one bedroom condo different than a one bedroom hotel room?
not really, except we don't know, we know how many one bedroom condos we have. We don't know how many one bedroom hotel rooms we have.
Right. And I think the point we were trying to at least drill into a little bit is this, we're trying to get a better metric on the perception of mix between short-term rentals, primary residences and second residences. And I think that the units is one view. However, until we get to the hospitality rooms on the island, we're not going to have a clear view of the true mix. That's just my opinion. Yeah.
Well, that goes back to my other question was, the 37, 26% that we had kind of before, I mean, are we questioning or that, or if it's off by 1 or 2%, I'm not really concerned about it as far as a comprehensive plan, but if that's about right, and I think that's what we've kind of found is the case, isn't that what
run with it, I think is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would agree. I think what we're doing here was try to get a little deeper into what's the trend of what's happening to the houses. But I think the percentage is fine that we came up with this time.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's challenging that, Dave.
Yeah, but I think the chasing of quantifying rental rooms is helpful. Now, whether it's a condotel or an individual hotel per se, that really doesn't matter. I was just trying to get on the county website to see, say, how the Seaside Inn, if that's broken down into 36 tax maps, if that in fact got condoized. Otherwise, I don't know if the assessor's office would be able to tell us anything more than what we already know. If, because a hotel is going to have one tax bill, one tax map number. The condotel, it should in fact have as many tax map numbers and tax bills as there are rooms, if all of them got sold. But just knowing what that number is helpful in us understanding the quantities of, again, rental units to residents.
And honestly, yeah, I kind of think also in the term of how many people do we actually, during peak season, how many potential people do we have on the island?
Yeah, we've definitely taken a stab at kind of 100% occupancy. Every rental is at its, kind of what do we get to on 4th of July weekend? How many heads are in beds on that night? And I don't know that it's always kind of been a guess. We could probably get a better guess.
And maybe we just take that away, off this. It's not part of the comprehensive planning process. I think that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
We're kind of delving into a whole different area.
Well, so I tell you what, so for this, let's agree that we will refine the request to the assessor, and we'll try to get, it sounds like mainly the 4% versus 6% added. I think the exercise of hotel room counts is going to be a different exercise based on the, what Ron correctly said, that the Boardwalk Inn will have one TMS number.
Yeah, I guess simplistically, I would want to see all the property records you can get for zip code 29451, just have them do a dump. I mean, they've got all this data. It's so easy to manipulate through it. And Steve, maybe, I guess you're going to put together a request for it. It's pretty simple.
I'll have it something, and you guys can refine it. So I'll shoot something to you, Doug, tomorrow, my first thoughts, and you can get the group's input.
Yeah, Scott, I can tell you that, because we have done that before, where we get just kind of everything they have, and they have forewarned us that, and it comes out to be true, that you have, a little 5-foot drainage easement.
Right.
Has a TMS number associated with it. A roadway will have a TMS number associated with it. And I know that we've kind of, maybe they have better tools to do it, but we have always asked them to kind of take out all of that stuff, just because, they know how it's coded and they know how to, where I don't know that any of us does.
Yeah, no, I think that
There are a lot of TMS numbers out here that don't have, useful stuff attached to them.
yeah, no, I think this was 95% good. I think we're just talking about tweaking it a little bit. Because I agree with you. I think they sorted out a bunch of things we don't need to see, which you're correct.
And again, just going to the county's website, to their property information tag, I picked on Seaside Inn, I don't know why. They did show like 4 or 5 tax map numbers on the global site plan, but when I clicked in and asked for additional real property info, right there it is, 46 freestanding units.
Ah.
It's a whole lot easier than counting tax map numbers. So you can probably just go down the block, highlight each individual property, and have that information in half an hour and a beer. So, it's doesn't have to be highbrow.
Yeah, I think hotel rooms we can get.
Yeah.
Like I said, there just aren't that many of them, so we can do that pretty readily. So do we want to get that information, work on it this coming month, and then revisit the housing element next month?
Sure.
Sounds good.
Yeah, one of the questions that kind of drove us in the beginning was, weren't we trying to determine whether number of bedrooms and size of houses was increasing over the, because I think that was a statement we had made somewhere in there, and we were trying to verify whether that was really true.
Well, I think forgive me, I don't remember when you guys put together a couple of quick pivot tables. I think it's, once you have the data, it's fairly simple to show that, yeah, over the last 30 years, the number of bedrooms per house has increased from 3 to 5 on average. And the square footage of houses has increased. So I think that's all. I'm not sure that's integral to the strategic plan, but it's important data to see that the houses are both growing in size and number of bedrooms. And is that trend going to continue?
Right.
All right, let's if everybody's okay with it, let's move to the land use element. And this is one that we looked at last month, fairly minor modifications that I had. I don't know if anybody has, and those are shown in your red line in your packet. Any comments or thoughts on that section? I know that we do have some outstanding issues there also on housing. Wild Dunes, we don't have the ARC numbers yet inside Wild Dunes. That is incidentally something that the Dick Cronin, the old mayor, was also kind of a number cruncher, and I think he saw this meeting and also expressed an interest in kind of pouring through the numbers, I think in terms of the relationship with Wild Dunes and what's happening there. So we'll have more data on that part of it coming. I think the rest of those were fairly minor changes. We eliminated a few strategies that we felt like were probably hot issues at the time, but no longer applied. Any thoughts, comments?
It looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question. Somewhere in there it said there was 2 boat landings. I didn't even realize we had 2.
Breach Inlet is a
No,
small one.
Breach was listed separately. It said 2 public. I'm trying to find it. Page 51.
And I don't know that we really, I mean, I guess Breach Inlet is used by,
And I thought the other one was listed. The Breach Inlet one I thought was listed as a private one. Maybe it just meant that was.
I'm not sure that at one time the boat landing down at the marina was 2 side by side, 1 side by side, 2 boat landings. And they later subdivided it because it was so wide into 3. I don't know if that's what they're referencing, but you can launch 3 boats at a time now down there. And it used to only be 2. And then we have the city owns the boat landing down at the Carroll Realty building. And for $100 a year, you can go to City Hall and sign up and get a key to that boat landing. It's just parking's in it for you there.
so I think that wording, I think it's the 2 boat landings is referencing one at Breach Inlet, one at the marina, and then it says additionally a private marina is located.
Okay, I'll follow you. Yeah.
That's talking about the actual marina, which is a separate entity from the landing.
From the boat landing. Okay, I got you. It just, yeah, when I read that, I was thinking there was potentially another one.
No, I think that's
About.
Breach Inlet.
All right, sorry.
I believe the city still owns a tract of land leading into the marsh at the end of, is it 10th Avenue, Douglas?
11th.
11th Avenue?
Yeah, 11th, there is a strip with a massive tree in the middle of it. That is an old road right of way. There is another, there are a couple of those in there, that are old right of way strips that would have gone across the road, basically across Palm. And then I think there's one I know there's one in 11th, and I think there's also one somewhere in there, 5th, 6th, 8th.
When JC used to help the owners along Ocean Boulevard by scraping all the sand off the beach and the dunes, he would dump it back in the marsh. And that's where, what is it, Merritt Boulevard and the Isle of Palms Exchange Club were created in the 60s. For, can't see the ocean, JC. Could you knock that dune down a little more and just, throw it in the marsh? We'll be okay.
I never knew that they wanted the dunes reduced. I never heard that.
Yeah, back when we didn't have hurricanes.
It was like the accreted land.
Created land.
You could knock it down so you could see it.
Well, they didn't want us to end up like Sullivan's Island back then.
That's interesting. All right, we want to talk about priority investment element.
Yeah.
which this is kind of an interesting one, and it's the main reason I put in the packets this time. I put the Municipal Association's Comprehensive Planning Guide, the excerpt from that describes what each element of the comprehensive plan is supposed to include, mainly for your benefit to read the priority investment element, because it never was really crystal clear to me what it was supposed to have in it. And it is also interesting that, I will say that historically the city, so when you read that number 9, what the priority investment element should include, it basically, to me, boils down to a list of potential funding sources coupled with a list of recommendations of projects that may be eligible for those funding sources. And then it's requesting that, anything, if you think about these comprehensive plans that are tying close communities that, one community up against another, it was an effort to get those coordinated with adjacent communities. So historically, we have kind of indicated that, and we have felt, and basically it's bared out, that we have not been able to get a lot of grant funding. Kind of in years past, it seemed to be very much driven by the income levels in the community. I think there's been a little bit of a shift in that funding, and that it is now being made more readily available to communities that have a vulnerability from disasters, which we certainly qualify for. So I think that we have been more successful in getting grants that deal with drainage. The Water and Sewer Commission has been able to secure a grant for wastewater, but it was specifically because of I think their vulnerability due to flooding adjacent to an old, 50-year-old steel system. So I do think that, and I don't know, I'm not really crystal clear on how much infrastructure federal money will be available in the future, but it does sound like more will be available in the future than has historically been. So I don't know. I think that this one may be kind of a opportunity to just think about if we could get more money, how would we recommend it be allocated, and what would our priorities be? And I think that the existing element is it's pretty generic, and that may be a good thing. But it was new. This element, when the comprehensive plan was originally written, this element wasn't one of the elements that it was required to have. So it got added. I guess, in the 2010 update, and it was new in 2007. So I would say that the sentence in there that the last sentence in the first paragraph, that other infrastructure projects will probably need to be funded in a traditional manner because the Isle of Palms does not qualify as low income, making grant money unlikely. That may not be, we may be a little bit more, a little less likely to get grant funding, but I don't think it's as dire as it probably was when that sentence was originally put in there. I will also say that I feel like the general sentences or paragraphs that follow seem to follow the same trends that we've talked about, with adding sewer. The first paragraph of projects is extending public sewer system. The next one is improving drainage in low-lying areas. The next one is talking about electrical distribution and improving that. by going underground if we could. And then the last one is talking about transportation improvements in terms of trails and bike paths, things of that nature. So I think that generally those same type projects would be the ones that we would be interested in.
So Douglas, the first paragraph, sounds like you're recommending maybe we delete that last sentence.
Yes, I think so.
Let that stand. So I
And
would
I might,
say
you know,
absolutely.
I might replace that sentence with a sentence that explains that, you know, because we're in a sensitive environment that's prone to damage, that we should be aggressive about pursuing mitigation style grant projects to minimize the impacts of a disaster on us and be more resilient. So something that, instead of speaking negatively as to why we won't get grants, speak more positively about our conditions that we think make us more eligible for grants. Anybody have a sense of whether we think, and maybe I don't know, I don't, do we know, I mean, all this talk about infrastructure grants and investing in America's infrastructure, do we know for certain or have a good sense of what's going to happen there?
I mean, I was kind of looking at the ones you list out. We already kind of said that there's potentially money available from some other place for all of those. So I actually kind of wondered, if you just want kind of a generic ending statement that will continue to seek other funding sources for our primary projects, our plant.
So we feel like the projects in there still hold, basically. I mean, it seems like those are large scale projects that are forever on our drawing boards: expanding sewer, improving drainage, improving.
Continually try to get money to fund some of these from outside sources,
i.e. grant funds.
right?
Yes, I think that's the goal. And I know, and I don't know what the status of this is, but I know that their council has, and it may still be in the budget, but at various times the council has authorized kind of a boost in staffing to do these. I think that maybe we've pivoted more to hiring out grant writing. It's one of those things that, you know, takes a significant chunk of work, and the existing staff doesn't kind of have their eyes always peeled for these things. So the firms that work with them, the engineering firms, like we'll be talking with on our upcoming drainage master plan. I mean, they're very plugged in, and we have you know, they're always looking for it and kind of have their eyes open on what they think their project would qualify for, and we're being advised on that, and we hire them out to do the applications when they come up.
Hey, Douglas, what's the status of the grant writer position? Is that
So
still on?
I think, and I'll get an update on that, but my sense is that we are putting that money, instead of having a full-time staff employee, that we're putting that towards hiring professionals on a case-by-case basis and not having a full-time staff member. But that would be a good, let me verify that for our next meeting.
Can you find out who's going to, if that's the case, then is somebody on staff going to identify the opportunity before they go out and hire? I thought part of the grant writers or the grant position was to identify potential opportunities for the IOP and then chase them. Or is that something that's going to, where does that identification process or role reside? Is that going to be in your group or somewhere else?
I think it would be for the professional, the design professional with each project individually, I think. But let me, and maybe that's a good, maybe we put a sentence in here that describes that or speaks to that. But let me check, let me verify what our plan is on that point and report back.
A quick question on that first paragraph. It reads, because many of the projects included in this element are roadway and drainage improvements, they could be funded by Charleston County Roadwise program. Is that still in existence, or do we tend to go more directly to county council for these funds and the tax authority for matching funds for different programs? I don't even know what Charleston County Roadwise program is anymore. It's still in existence.
Unless it's changed names, that's that 1% tax gets into a fund, and I think generally it's doing the repaving out here. I do know that we have, and I think it goes by a different acronym. I think it's, the kind of, there's a different project, there's a different pot of money that did the path at the bottom of the connector here recently near my office, but also done through the county. But it is separate from the Roadwise, and it's, I don't know if that's CTC, Charleston County CTC program. I can certainly clarify that, Sandy.
Okay, and the reason I ask is because I don't remember, was there money available for the, what's the roadway, the group's name, City to the Beach, the bicycle?
Yeah, Battery to Beach.
Battery to Beach, thank you, yes. They have put some markers out. Of course, that directs a lot of bicyclers this direction. My point here is it appears that drainage and such projects are only funded through Charleston County Roadwise program, and I'm wondering if we want to direct that and to others or something else.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I know that the Roadwise company did. I mean, the Roadwise program did do a number of projects, but there's definitely other prominent programs that we've gotten money from. So maybe it does kind of make it sound like that's the only thing we're getting money from, and that's certainly not the case. So maybe we just expand on that on the other sources.
Yeah, let's back up to the description of that paragraph. To me, it sounded like that it was more potentially to be a listing of funding sources available, and then what projects we have that should be requesting those sources.
I think that's correct. I think that's what the authors of the planning legislation envision the priority investment element including. I think that's correct.
So you already mentioned like Roadwise the beachfront management, or what it's called, OCRM.
Now, OCRM does not have, I mean, they're more of a regulatory agency.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who do we get funding for beach in the past for beach renourishment?
Oh, yes. The state does give us, this OCRM permits it. And then we do get, and I guess it's through DNR, I think. But yeah, that's another one where there's kind of a list of contributors at the state level. I don't think we got, because we lost some of the beach because of erosion from storms that were declared disasters, we did get some reimbursement money from the federal government. It's not really a grant program as much as it's mitigation reimbursement. Well, that would be another good list, I think. You know, when we do erosion, when we do renourishment programs, there's a long list of contributors to that project.
I think that was through FEMA, because that was shortly after the hurricane, and there was funding that was allotted due to damage from the hurricane beach erosion. So there was some small monies that came in on that large funding program. A lot of players in that one.
Yep.
And so like listed C and G is potentially funding under the underground cabling, electrical.
Yes, Dominion has the.
Dominion, sorry.
Yep, they have the basically a matching account. Standard, what's it called? They have an account where basically they will pay half of the cost of undergrounding utilities. They have a well, up to a certain amount. But we have a fund that's held by Dominion that covers Dominion's half of those projects. I would add that we did have, and I don't know, Ron, you definitely, and Lisa, you all were on the commission when the prior city administrator was working on the sewer expansion kind of project several years ago. And she actually compiled, part of what she did was compiling a list of potential grant sources for sewer projects. So I can distribute that. I mean, it's a pretty nice, tidy list of programs that she had identified that would be helpful. So I can.
And it might help to instigate the thought on other possible revenue sources that may not be grants. I mean, I sit back and am just in awe that it only took 2 weeks to get all those wheel stops put in place at cost to the state, I'm sure. You know, and the restriping of our bridge with lack of safety guardrails. Someone's going to fall off that bridge, is going to be on the state. Because now they're sanctifying bike riding and walking on a bridge. It's usually used to be considered trespassing in my mind. But now we've got a 32-inch concrete side rail on the bridge that somebody could easily fall off of, and needs to be 42 inches high as any other guardrail, I would think. Anyhow, but the thought being, you know, with the state's takeover of their rightful right-of-ways and telling us how we conduct business on the island, I certainly think it would only be fair that the city go back against some department of the state for compensation for the additional traffic flow and personnel that now can come to the island. You know, just a thought. And I think if we could see what grants that we could have found for sewer and sewering the island, there's got to be something that could jog a memory of all of us smart people to find other ways to get compensated for what's happened, quite honestly.
Public safety grant.
Perhaps something like that.
So Ron, I guess you're saying basically funding sources other than grants. So kind of how to gain an ability to tap into like
State
just
funds.
NCDOT's general operating budget to some degree.
Sure.
And that did happen. I mean, that happened with erosion where it was just put into, and I think it's DNR or some state agency. They knew a renourishment project was coming up, and they inserted an amount of money into their budget for that year that they allocated to that program. It wasn't a grant. It wasn't, now it was kind of a one-time thing, but it was just put in the state's operating budget and earmarked for the city.
Yeah.
And I guess the same thing happens with the counties that pass through the accommodations tax, that it goes to the county. The county has traditionally, they've kind of let it flow through them and given it back to us. But and I'm sure you will have heard that this year they did not do that. But I guess that's another example, Ron, of what you're saying is not necessarily grant. It's just county money that
Right.
we feel like should come back to us.
Yes.
Not quite sure how we would put that in a
Don't
succinct
know either.
paragraph that
in a correct manner.
Yeah. But that's a good point.
So much of the continuing ed classes that we've taken are often talking about lost revenue sources within government. That's, we had the one on the short-term rentals in a couple of other cities, and the economic loss that they just didn't recover. And there's something that has to equate in our situation, not necessarily with the short-term rentals, but with the traffic. How can else we resolve? If we're stuck holding the burden, because by golly, we're fortunate enough to live here, but yet we have to have a police force of 34 people or more, which is not something we need for an island of 4,500 residents. Those kind of things should, directly attributed to our island successes, tourism and all. And yes, we're getting some accommodation tax revenues and things like that to compensate for that. But just, what's a way that for lack of a better word, day tripper can contribute while not contributing? That's kind of the thought.
So I think those are good points. I could certainly, I've got a long list of things to report back on in terms of, and I think that we're all kind of in agreement that this section at one page is kind of light, and maybe we could improve on this, but maybe at the time we don't have all of the information that would be useful to you all. So why don't I try to do my best to put together a more comprehensive list of funding sources, distribute it out, and we can, and I guess in the meantime, you could also think of projects that might, once you get the list, maybe we could think of projects that would align well with the various funding sources, and come up with more of a strategy here for this element.
Douglas,
Yep.
so number 8 on here is the transportation element that addresses some of, I think, what Ron's alluding to.
Yep.
And we really haven't talked about it. I think we went from land use right to priority investment element. But did I miss something, or we don't?
We did, when we talked about it, we recognized that there were a lot of things in motion with what the state was doing. And so we intentionally delayed that discussion. And now I do think that we've, I think that we kind of know basically what the result is going to be. I think that that's been pretty well resolved in the last month or so, with what the state's going to require us to have. So I do think we're in a position to go back to that. We intentionally did delay discussing that because we just kind of couldn't get our arms around what was going to happen.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm bringing it up is
You just hit your mic there, Sandy.
thank you. We in the past as a community have reached out to cooperating authorities, highway patrol, county police, sheriff's department for assistance. We've certainly looked at CARTA, although I don't believe that's been an option that's worked in our community in terms of transportation and daytime visitors. But those are just some of the obvious, the reach out to other community authorities to try and help alleviate some of what the overcrowding basically on the nice weather days and the weekends.
Yep. So we have the transportation element to go back to. We also delayed on the population element because we knew that census data was coming to us, and we're getting a little trickle of information about that. I mean, you've seen the talk about redistricting based on some preliminary data, and they're telling us that the census data should be presented sometime in the summer months. So those are two items that once we kind of agreed that we would, once we get through the first pass, we would go back to those because we'd have more information on both of those subjects. So I do think we're getting to be in a better position that we'll be ready to talk about those two elements.
So going back to this priority investment, we've agreed on the changes to the first paragraph. I didn't really see anything that's jumped out on the second paragraph, but in the third paragraph, we start talking about the stormwater drainage and things like that. There's an awful lot in process on that. We've gotten grants for these things, and I don't know the exact status of all the different projects, and we're in the middle of working on some of that with engineers and interviews and things like that. Is what do we need to do to that third paragraph to, or do we need to do anything to address where we are and what the future will be with that?
Well, to your point, you know, we're about to start a drainage master plan. Um, and so that it's probably too far away um, to incorporate any of the results of that planning into this plan. But we could certainly, and especially, I think, you know, we'll have somebody that that effort should be underway when this plan goes back to council for adoption. So I think we'll probably foreshadow that, you know, that work is underway as of the time of the writing of this plan and should identify really a priority list of future projects.
Okay, because currently that paragraph ends up, in addition to these projects, many other areas drain poorly, which should be addressed by future drainage projects. It's just sort of like, let's just kick the can down the road is what it's.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the future language will probably be more detailed but similar, and that it's going to say, you know, starting in 2020, a plan was being worked on, and hopefully you'll have results of that plan.
Right, and the result of this part of the plan will be basically to finish the master plan for the island. So we can, at that point, we don't need to kick it down the road saying, and there's other areas we need to look at. This current plan will finish the island.
That's correct.
And we've asked them to look at regulations and ordinances. One of the things we should also ask them to look at is funding sources.
Yes, would agree.
So yeah, so I agree. We can change that last sentence a little bit to make it more serious that we are completing the master plan for the rest of the island, which will include, you know, identification of projects and funding sources and or whatever, some language like that. Is that what you're getting at, Sandy? Okay.
So I think that's a good start, kind of a good first pass on that. And I think that discussion that you're having, or we've just started, would segue nicely into just talking a little bit about that master plan project. If everybody's good, everybody okay to move on?
Well, I just, the power you wanted, the fourth paragraph,
Yeah.
going chronologically here, sorry. It's not S, C, E, and G, of course, so that would be Dominion, but do we want to address that the city currently does set aside matching funds with the current utility provider?
And didn't we just kind of, for lack of a better word, clear the air a little bit on how we're going to move forward with them? And we've had some joint meetings, and it all started with cutting down trees and led to, but you have a fund you need to use. So aren't we in a stronger position with Dominion now that say we have a better plan going forward to how to use that fund? Or am I overstating that?
I do think we're in a better position. We may have been in position 0 and now we're in position 1.5.
Okay, got it.
Yes, but I think, to your point, that could be, we've had recent experiences that have led us to kind of work closer with the power company than we have in years. So that it's kind of fresh on our minds. So we can definitely add some good information to that paragraph.
So again, moving along chronologically, the fifth paragraph talks about safe and efficient systems for cyclists, pedestrians, golf carts, and low-speed vehicles to circulate the island will reduce roadway congestion and parking problems and should be a priority. I wish it were. But I don't, yeah, just, I guess that it really should end up, rather than it should be a priority. I don't like the word should, that means there comes an opinion, personal opinion, should be further pursued or investigated would be, I think we're always looking at that every time we look at parking issues and safety issues with public safety committee through the city.
Yeah, and I guess, I guess pursuing almost seems like that should be it's almost written as a strategy or a goal.
Mhm.
And I guess it is goal 9.2, improve traffic flow, reduce congestion. And then there's a strategy.
And it almost seems that that should be divided into two different ones. I mean, the parking thing is just a different issue than many of the other ones. And maybe, the cyclists and walk golf carts and low speed vehicles and walking and paths is fine. But it isn't parking itself a single item that we should be on the objective list. Just my thought.
As a priority investment specifically, Steve, are you thinking?
Yeah, to me that's different than bike paths and cyclists and golf carts, as we've seen in the last few months.
Right.
And there needs to be a plan working with DOT to hammer that out, and who's going to pay for it and funding. And that's really the purpose of this section, is to look at what's the priority investments and how is it going to be funded and paid for.
Yeah, I guess cyclists, pedestrians, golf carts, those are all kind of alternate modes of transportation. And what you're getting at is we need to also, in addition to that, we need to focus on the primary mode of transportation and making that also efficient and safe.
Right. And where people park.
Well,
Yeah.
parking goes to density, I think. Yeah.
I would look at splitting those into two different goals and objectives. And again, I know city staff and management has been spending a lot of time with DOT talking those through, so they may have other.
Is that me or did
Oh, Steve froze. Yeah.
You just froze up.
you there, Steve? Oh,
I think probably most of I guess S40 looks like it passed today. So that'll impact. Yeah.
so let's agree to come back to the priority investment. I think that's good. High level review. Let us get more information to look at and kind of go through it in more detail at the next meeting, if that's okay. We may have lost Steve entirely.
I think we did.
Sorry, while we're going through this, I was pulling up his comprehensive plans, this element, to see how they did it, and it's all over the place.
Whose did you pull up?
I pulled up just the ones that came up first: Seabrook Island, Sullivan's Island, Sumter, and one other one that I closed by accident. Most of them are several pages long, and like I said, none of them seem to be the same format, but it might be interesting just to look at how other people have treated this element.
Sullivan's is pretty extensive, isn't it, David? I think.
Yes.
That might be a good one to pass around just as an example.
Yeah, David, if you see some good ones,
I'll
pass them on and we'll circulate them.
dig through some more of them. I was just like, while we were talking, I was curious to how other people approached it, so I was trying to pull one up. So I'll look through them and try to get something out in the next couple of days.
Okay, good. Yeah, this one, like I said in the beginning, this element came after the planning legislation had been in place, so it kind of got crowbarred in after the fact. So in reading it, it just seemed to kind of, you could almost tell that when you went through the plan that it was just shoehorned in there. And
Can we prioritize the priority investment? So we've got sanitary, storm, and traffic, right? I mean, is there any value in ranking those in this section, or they're just kind of thrown out there in no particular order? But I mean, in my mind, they may not agree with me, but it's traffic, storm, and sanitary.
Yeah, I mean, that is the name of the element is priority investment. So just reading it at face value, I would say that that's an appropriate, I think that's kind of what the goal would be is
Okay, just making sure that I guess it wasn't abundantly clear just reading
yeah, I would agree that
through
it
it.
can kind of be, but I guess, I mean, I think that's kind of what the intention was. would be my-
Although they may not pursue this or same pots of money or funding sources, it still would be valuable in my mind to come up with our opinion on what the biggest or most pressing issue is of the three. I don't know. I haven't looked at Sullivan's Islands either, so somebody recommended that. I'll take a look and see what they did.
I like that idea, Marty, though.
All right, well, let's circle back on this one. If that's all right with everybody. If everybody is agreeable, I wanted to just talk about the master plan. And we have had a mandatory meeting. I'm pretty sure that's happened since you all have last met. And we had 6 firms attend. So that basically tells us kind of who we think is interested in giving us a proposal. And I think they're generally the firms that we would have expected. They're the kind of firms locally that do this type of work. So, I mean, I think it's good that there's interest out there, and I think we'll get some good proposals. They are going to submit their proposals this coming Monday. So whatever that is, 5-6 days from today. And I didn't know if the group, and I'll certainly distribute them as soon as I have them. And I don't know if you all would like to. I know that last time we set a special meeting just because to just review those proposals and choose, kind of rank them how we felt like they responded and how we felt like their capabilities matched up with what we want. Kind of choose the top. Maybe you may want to interview all of them depending on how many you get, but we could choose the top 2 or 3 and then set up interviews for those to then ultimately come to a recommendation to city council. Knowing that we're going to get those next Monday, do you all want to try to sit down and just go through them at a special meeting? Or do you want to, I mean, we could wait and do it at a regular meeting in June. I think I was hopeful that we would get a recommendation up to council in the month of June. So that would have us kind of having a special meeting here at the end of May, interviews early June, and then a recommendation, kind of mid-June.
I'm open for that, Douglas.
That sounds good.
It takes a while to go through them. And I think we need to decide what we, do a little scorecard kind of thing like we did last time, Douglas.
Yes.
That we can, kind of come to some agreement. But I think it's good to do it in a special meeting.
Is what's okay. And is everybody anybody out of town? Kind of the well, I guess we have Memorial Day. Anybody out of town for that week or weeks around that? So ideally, I think for me would be that week of the 24th to the 28th.
Yeah.
I have that Wednesday
Yeah.
is bad for me. But otherwise, I'm good that whole week. Does anybody have a? No, that
Say
they have,
24th to the 28th, Douglas?
yeah, just somewhere in that week. And other than the 26th.
I can't do it the 25th, but
We have a 27th.
I'm good on the 27th.
27th is good.
27th is good.
Could we do earlier in the day, 27th?
Yes.
Yeah.
Marty, how is
Would be
your?
preferable, yeah.
Yep, I'm good.
What's your?
I'm great that day, actually.
Okay. So Marty, if we were to do midday, if your work's kind of dealing with West Coast, are you better in the mornings?
Yeah. Yeah, generally speaking, a lot of people don't get online until about 10 o'clock, 10:30 our time. So, but I'm telling you, that's between submittals for us. So that is really, really good. So whatever you guys pick, middle of the day, early. I have nothing on the calendar on the 27th. So
Okay.
make it
Let's
happen.
shoot for the 27th, and we'll, if morning will probably work best for me. So if like 9, 10 on the morning of the 27th.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I will distribute them as soon as I get them. So I'll give them to you. You know, I think they come in on Monday, so I'll send them to you Tuesday.
Sounds good.
So the only other thing is I now don't know, as of yesterday, I don't know what our status is with meeting virtually. We're going to get to this point eventually. We may be there today. I don't know. Where we generally, you know, it took special permission for us to be able to meet legally virtually. And I think that is kind of running its course. So I'm suspecting that in June, those meetings will be in person.
Yeah, did you get my email reply on that, Douglas?
I don't recall seeing it, but it
Oh.
probably. How are you good with it?
Yeah, I'm good with it. You laid it out pretty clear in
Okay.
that message, so we're comfortable with all that.
Okay, good.
We'll make it happen. I'm not going to be the one holdout here. Just don't anybody cough on me, all right?
Or me, for that matter.
That's right.
No, I think we can do it in a manner that'll be safe. You know, and eventually, luckily, this group doesn't have. It's pretty rare that you will have kind of packed house that wants to attend your meetings. I mean, typically, it has been a very sparsely attended meeting, so I think we'll be in good shape. That's all I have, Chairman, unless
Okay.
the folks have anything.
Is there a motion to adjourn? No one wants to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Scott.
Second.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good.
Thank you. Good to see everybody.
Thank
No,
you.
off record at 5:44.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Hey, Douglas, can I give you a call real quick?